Yeah, let's start the session going. Let me do the introduction session. Who am I? I'm Ashwin Prabhu. As Stephen said, I'm a UK-based Microsoft integration MVP for the last couple of years, 2015 and 2014. I'm an independent consultant based here in the UK doing works on BizTalk server and services. I've been working in BizTalk for the last more than 12 years now. I've almost worked on all the versions of BizTalk. If you have posted any questions in the last couple of years on MSDN forums, I would have replied to most of the questions. And also I do a lot of write-ups. Even in the Logic app and the app services, I've done some write-ups, a couple of use cases and how to do steps are there in my blog, which is shown there, the blog URL. My Twitter handler is at @mrashwinprabhu, and the LinkedIn URL is as shown there. Let's move on to today's session. I'll start with why cloud? Why do we need cloud for the integration? And then I'll move on to where it's all started and where we are now. It's a little bit history about the new baby Logic apps. I'll also explain about the topic of the day, the app service and Logic apps. I always felt it is important to know about the terms, to know things around the Logic app and the app services. I'll explain about Azure Resource Manager, Swagger, Swashbuckle, and we'll move on to the demo where I will show a use case study where we'll be implementing a request response pattern. We'll validate a message, we'll do a transformation and send a response back. And we'll also show how to handle conditions in it, how to handle error cases, how to see the status of the actions and everything around that. And also I'll show you the role-based access control for Logic apps. And the final one on the demo perspective, I'll show you how to deploy Logic apps from Visual Studio. I don't know how many of us here knew that in Build 2015, 1st of May, Microsoft showcased how to deploy Logic apps from the Visual Studio. I'll show you a quick demo on it. The last, before the question hour, is what next, what we can expect in the near future in the space of the Logic app and the app services. Let's move on to the topic now. Why do we need cloud? Are we not sufficient with what we have on-prem for our integration needs? Why do we really need cloud? Priority to business process, then IT procurement. This has always been the selling point for cloud services, not just from Microsoft, but also from the other vendors who provide cloud services. Why spend your time on the resources on how best to implement the business process, but not on IT-related things like an infrastructure procurement, configuring your software and hardware, managing the servers and services uptime. Why someone needs to spend a lot of time and effort on the IT, which is the service provider, not on the core business services. Our business is not to worry about the service provider, which is the IT, but to implement or concentrate more on our core business plan and the value. To pay for what you use, not for what you sleep on the rack. Now, for example, if I'm going to get an order message from another business partner only during a certain period of the day, or if my business is seasonal based, or if I'm going to get multiple fold of business during the Christmas period, let me scale up and down my platform based on the dynamic nature of the business. I work for a big retailer in UK whose business multiplies into many times during the Christmas period. But for the Christmas preparation, to handle the processor messages in Christmas period, they start at the peak preparation period much ahead of early summer. They make sure the infrastructure is ready. They make sure what if due to any promotional deals, what if I'm going to get lots of business, is my infrastructure is ready or not? They spend a lot of resource and money on making sure the infrastructure is ready. That's sort of okay for a big customers. What if it is a small customer? And do they really need to spend more time and money on making sure that the server infrastructure is ready much ahead of their actual business period? It doesn't make any common sense or even a business sense to pay pay for your the services or pay for your service, which is going to sleep in in your rack for most of the time. It doesn't make any sense to spend your money on the service on the rack as a capital expenditure. It always makes sense to spend more money on or spend your resource and time as and when there is a business need, in terms of an operational expense. Integrate with SaaS. You know, things have changed after cloud. Softwares are nowadays hosted in cloud as software as services. So integration needs have also been expanded to cloud. Build application on the cloud to integrate with any SaaS-based application. Access a SaaS-based application like Salesforce, bring the data from the Salesforce and integrate with any of the on-prem data. The scope of integration has to expand to meet the way the systems are hosted now. Simplifying the B2B integration. Integration with other business applications across the enterprises and geographical boundaries are always become the norms of business nowadays. I worked for another big retailer who has got an enterprise level B2B hosting services. They have lots of the other suppliers. The B2B, the customer's B2B system always expects us the orders and the payment detail to come to the service in a certain format. At one case, we had a supplier, we had a mango supplier at the other end of the continent. No, he said, hey, I'm good in selling mangoes, not in sending messages. I don't bother about, I don't have resource or the technical expertise to change things or fiddle around my infrastructure or send a message as you need. With the hybrid connection, it just requires only an outbound TCP or an HTTP connectivity from your private network. You don't need to open any firewalls. You don't need to fiddle much around your firewalls or your network perimeters. All change. You don't need any changes to the network perimeter configuration to allow any inbound connectivity into your network. It's enables self-service configuration, changes to the applications, and improving the responsiveness of the business changes. Use cloud to extend your on-premise investment. This is the problem in the perception. When we have a successful product like BizTalk for more than 10 years, if there are customers who've been using BizTalk server for a while, and if Microsoft introduces another integration service, we perceive the services as a replacement to the server. Cloud is not a replacement to your on-premise integration, your on-premise investments. It supplements the on-premise integration capabilities to the cloud. It simply expands your integration capabilities. You now have more tools in your arsenal to handle ever-growing integration needs. With hybrid connection and with the cloud the services, see cloud as an enhancer rather than a competitor or as a replacement of your integration needs. As I said, I thought it's better to have a bit noisy, though it is a small child. This is a very new child which recently been announced. I thought it's helpful to know about where it's all started and where we are now. It's all started at Professional Developers Conference in 2008, where Microsoft unveiled Windows Azure, the operating system for cloud. Over the years, Azure has become the Microsoft platform for the cloud offerings like websites, mobile applications, storage services, and others. At the same time, BizTalk Server has been established as the primary integration product for on-premise integration needs. Realizing the need for integration in the cloud and to meet the demand, Microsoft released Service Bus EAI and EDA labs. I still remember, I hope people still remember this, EAI and EDA labs at the community technology preview on 17th December. With this, the goal was simple. The goal was to enable the customers to sign up in a shared environment and set up a simple XML EDI integration without worrying much about the installation and the maintenance. For a point-to-point integration scenarios, it had rich capabilities. And CTP was refreshed sometime after incorporating the feedbacks from the customers. The CTP was hosted on a shared environment. So running a users or the custom code was always challenged on the shared environment, though the product had all the rich integration features, or most of the integration features. Enabling the developer to write and execute the customer code has always been the key requirement to satisfy the wide range of integration problems. That's always been one of the key factors or success factors for the on-premise BizTalk server. And also, when the cloud integration facility has been provided, customer wanted guaranteed SLAs, a better performance. So on 3rd June 2013, Microsoft released BizTalk Services Preview and is GA on general availability on 21st November 2013. It's all history now. With per tenant deployment model, deploying in custom assemblies has become a reality. This cloud offering was backed by the SLA level, the enterprise level SLA supported by the Microsoft support. It's all become a history now with change in the architecture, the perspective from Microsoft. After the service, after the BizTalk services for a few months in integration phase, as a result of customer feedbacks, not from the integration phase but also from the others, and also learning their own experience in managing the cloud application for a couple of years, Microsoft realized there is a need for the architecture change. Microsoft changed its architecture view from just being a big integration silo and democratized it into a smaller microservices, discrete reusable component with a HTTP REST endpoint that can be assembled into composite services. With this change in architecture approach, Microsoft previewed its app services, which also contains logic apps and the API apps as part of the preview on 24th March 2015. Where we are now is on this stage. We are in the preview stage of the app services. For our interest, the logic apps. Let's move on to using this as used by Microsoft and others to explain, to showcase the app services here. Why do we need an app services? While developing a website or any application internally for a company, the application may have an internal logic like moving a file from one place to another. Maybe something like move a file from an FTP to a SQL database. For the simple integration scenarios, a developer of a website application or a mobile application would have created their own bespoke integration code. Later, to achieve some management around it, they would have added some exception handlers, a tracking code to see the status of the file transfer. This would have been happen on the one end of the organization. At the same organization, for a complex B2B integration needs, they would have used BizTalk. They would have used the BizTalk and things that come with the BizTalk. The main reason for handling integration, but in two different approaches within the same in the same organization, is because of, I feel it is because of couple of main reasons. One, BizTalk facilities like adapters, the XML validators, mappers are very specific to BizTalk. They were not available in the arsenal of the non-BizTalk developers to implement a simple scenario like moving a file from an FTP to SQL. If a website or a mobile service developer were to develop a BizTalk services, the challenges involved is learning a new product. For implementing a simple integration, say why a non-BizTalk developer need to undergo a steep learning curve while implementing a simple case. Whereas in another case where in another customer case where they don't have any implementation of the BizTalk, it's another overhead of installing and managing the BizTalk comes into play. Whereas in the case of the same organization where BizTalk is already being used, but in some other different application, the application people or the C# developer or the web developer would have created their own bespoke and custom code. They have two different approaches for the integration. Microsoft realized this problem and made the integration specific feature, just the integration, not BizTalk specific features. See it as an integration, as integration specific features accessible to Azure Web Apps. It was called as Azure Website. Now it is Web Apps, mobile apps, the mobile services, to make the integration feature available as part of the same platform. So in this case, a website or a mobile developer wants to implement a simple scenario like moving a file from an FTP to SQL database. They can use the integration features like FTP or a SQL connectors. If they want to validate an XML file against the received XML file against a schema, why do you want to create write your own bespoke? BizTalk has given a BizTalk XML validator API app. The same platform can be used the same platform which has been used by this non-BizTalk developer can also be used by the integration specialist to handle more complex integration scenarios. This step, the platform by Microsoft, making the BizTalk facilities to be part of the broader suite of facilities in Azure, along with web apps and mobile apps, is called App Services. This is supported by the Microsoft vision of democratized integration to make rich ecosystem. They always been referring the term democratized integration. Yes, it makes sense from the web app developer or a mobile apps developer to access the integration, the API apps. What is the democratized thing from the BizTalk developer or Logic Apps point of view? Can I able to access anything from the web apps? Can I able to create a dynamic web page for my BAM tracking database? I don't know. The democratization, at least from my point of view, it is from the perspective of they keep using the word democratize. I see it is from the perspective of the web apps on the mobile apps. They really made the Logic app, the API apps to be accessed in their end, but not from my end, which I don't know. Azure App Services, as you can see here, is a single service that includes all the existing capabilities of the Azure services, Azure mobile services, and Azure BizTalk services. Azure App Services is now a fully managed platform as a service, a PaaS for the developer that makes easier to build mobile, web, and integration apps. It's not your let it load. Okay, let me continue with mine. The other, I thought I'll show you the actual website. Oh, yeah, here it is. To the new portal. If you click on Web Plus app, the four features that if you see it here, the web apps, mobile apps, Logic app, API app, this four combines together to make app service. Let's move on to the next slide. 1 minute. Logic apps. What is Logic apps? Integration. We all know that integration is not just about connecting different systems. It's also about mediating the business processes. Mediating the business processes between systems. Logic app is the new browser-based graphical way to model the business process. The workflow engine to automate the business process execution with the help of the connectors and the API apps, the BizTalk API apps from your resource group. The business process could be as simple as getting an order message from an FTP and update the internal order details into a database, or to make a complex scenario like get an order detail from a SaaS-based system from the cloud, calculate the VAT, and calculate the service charges based on your company's internal company rules, send the costs for order fulfillment to a database, and send an SMS. All this business, the workflow can be achieved, can be orchestrated in the Logic apps. As Logic apps or app services is based on an extensible model, it also enables us to use your own custom apps. Not everyone or any product, any product manufacturer or vendor is not going to give it's not going to satisfy all the needs of the integration out there. So you can create your own API app. For instance, let me give an example of an instance what I've discussed with the product groups when they were here during the BizTalk Summit in London. Let's say I have a Logic app where I need to call a Redis cache. I have a reference database. I want to cache that. I don't want to make a round trip to the database every time when I call the reference database. I have a Redis cache to cache my data. So what you can do is, it's all the API based. Create a custom API app, call the REST API, which in turn calls the Redis cache, caches your data. It's sort of your custom, the behaviors, the custom things which are not available already as part of the pre-build. You can create your own. There is no restriction. The restrictions are broken now. Either use what is available as there, otherwise create your own. The Logic apps comes with the pre-built connectors. There are about, I think, close to 40 connectors. And also it contains the BizTalk API apps. BizTalk API apps, nothing but the functionality that we are familiarized in BizTalk. They've just given the name BizTalk so that at least they know the popularity of the BizTalk and makes it easier for people to understand what BizTalk API can do. APIs like transformation services, which is a map, XML validator, business rule engine, now all available as part of the BizTalk API apps. It also provides a built-in support for tracking. With the status blade, you can track the status of the execution of the each actions within the logic app and the input that came in for each and every action and the output. We'll see all of this in detail while during my demo. Also, it also provides the role-based access control. If you want someone in your someone in your team to just check the status of the logic app without allowing him to change the configurations or without allowing him to execute the logic app, it's all possible with the help of the role-based access control. This tracking facility and the role-based access features are not developed specific for the logic app. They are part of the Azure. And the logic app being just part of the Azure gives its advantages. So you don't know, Microsoft haven't done anything specifically. Let me enable the tracking. Let me give the resource manager control. No, it's all part of the Azure services. Logic app is part of the Azure service. We get it because it's there in the platform. The deployment life cycle of the services are managed by the resource manager, Azure Resource Manager. The resource manager allows us to orchestrate the deployment of the various resources in the cloud. The system which powers the core of the Azure, the underlying engine of the Azure is same as the logic app. We all know the power of the engine for the Azure is been in live. It's been in use for more than 2 years now. The same engine has been used in the logic app. I was saying, it's also important to know about the terms around this. We saw about the resource manager. We also see about the Swagger. You've been keep hearing about the terms like Swagger and Swashbuckle. What it is, what they are. Swagger, in general, nothing to do. Don't conceive now when I explain it from the perspective of logic app and apps. Swagger, as a general, is a specification for describing, consuming, and visualizing RESTful APIs. It's a framework which provides the ecosystem of many tools. One of the key tools is the Swagger UI. UI is nothing but a web page. I think a web page is a collection of HTML, JavaScript, and CSS that dynamically generates documentation from a Swagger compliant API. The Swagger enabled RESTful API results in a language neutral and a machine readable interface which allows both the humans, if you want to expose your services, and if anyone at the other end wants to read it and understand your API, both the humans and the machine programmatically able to understand the capabilities of the RESTful services. The nice thing about the Swagger is that it keeps the documentation in sync with your server code. Any changes that you do for your API app code are reflected immediately. What is Swashbuckle? So, Swagger is a language neutral. So there are different implementations for different platforms. For ASP.NET Web API, Swashbuckle and Swagger.NET are the popular ones. There is another one along with the Swagger, which we don't hear much about the Swagger.NET. It's very much similar. It's another implementation of the the Swashbuckle for ASP.NET Web API. But among these two, Swashbuckle and the Swagger.NET, Swagger.NET, not much thing happening on the Swagger.NET. I think if you go to the website, at least for me, for more than close to 2 years, nothing's been happening on the Swagger.NET. Whereas for the Swashbuckle, the community has embraced this Swashbuckle. There are so many things are happening, being an ecosystem, so there are so many tools are coming out. In simple terms, for a REST API, for a given REST API, the Swagger can be implemented using Swashbuckle. That's fine. Why are we hearing the terms like Swagger and Swashbuckle when there is a presentation about the logic app? Because in Azure API apps, Microsoft adapts Swashbuckle to implement Swagger 2.0, the latest version. Swagger really becomes really handy when you develop your own custom an API app and expose it to the others. So it's really helpful. So I thought it's better to know about these things. You will keep hearing about the Swagger and Swasbuckle on every presentation, but I thought it's better to give some background about what it is and what is about the Swagger, Swan and Swashbuckle. We'll move on to how BizTalk fits into the Azure App Services. Why do we need to worry about BizTalk and the app services here? The reason I've added this slide is being the BizTalk developer by base. We've been using BizTalk for a while, so we are very comfortable with the terms that are used in BizTalk. So I thought what it makes, how the BizTalk fits into the app services, the another integration, the services on the cloud. With BizTalk, we have things like adapters to communicate with two systems, pipeline to do the pipeline processing, map to do the transformation from one form or another, trading partner management. In BizTalk, we have BizTalk Rules Engine, we have EDI, AS2 pipelines, we have JSON or XML or flat file encoders. We also have an orchestration which works as a workflow process. It does provide you an auditing. You can monitor the status of the logic apps. You can monitor the status of your orchestration instances. Orchestration also acts as a mediate of the shapes. These are the very familiar terms for the BizTalk developer or anyone who's been using the BizTalk. How does this fit into the app services? It fits in like for adapters, pipelines, maps, TPs, BERs, business rule engine, ADI, the AS2 EDI components, encoders are all API apps. They are all microservices. They are not just BizTalk components, or not just used for your logic apps. Can also be used as a standalone entity. They are API apps. Whereas Logic App is similar to what we do in our on-premise orchestration, a workflow engine. You can see you can audit the information. You can see what's happened to each instance of the flow of your execution of your Logic Apps. The Logic Apps is nothing but mediation of the shapes. During my demo, I'll show you how the shapes are sequenced or connected to each other. This is how they fit in to our familiarized world of BizTalk. Now it's time for that. What I'm going to show. Meanwhile, let me go to my virtual machine. I'm going to create a Logic app where I'm going to receive a message. Let's say I'm going to receive an order request message. I'm going to validate whether the received XML message is in a proper format. If it is proper, I'm going to transform the order request into a simple order response message. Order response message is going to contain a message saying, hey, I've received your message, and this is the reference which you send, and this is the act back. If it is after the transformation, I'm going to send the response as a response to the request which I've posted. If it is not a valid message, I'm going to give a response back saying, no, you have sent an invalid message. Let's do this. We receive an HTML. We are going to message to an HTTP, and I'm going to validate the message using an XML validator, and I'm going to transform the message from one format to another. Before we start, we know these are the actions. You need to provision the API apps, the HTTP listener, the transformation service, and an XML validator. I've already done it, but I'm going to show how to do it. There are a few things. While doing the demo, I'll also give you some tips about few things that will come handy during the development. So as first step, to provision the instances, go to click on this press button or the cross button, click on Web plus Mobile Marketplace. If you have not done it in the past, it will be afresh. You will not see this recent things. They are there because I've already done them. I've been trying them, so it is there. For someone who is pretty new, you have to go to click new on the Web plus Mobile and click on Azure Marketplace. an HTTP listener is going to receive the request and also going to send the response back. You can either search here, otherwise they are available under API apps. Click here, search for it. You'll click on it. HTTP listener blade. Click on the create button. Once you click on integrations on the HTTP listener, you'll get a new API app blade. This is the place where you'll give your name for the HTTP listener, and you'll have to select a service plan. Service plan is nothing but is something like a container where all your the API apps and the logic apps is going to run. It's something like a virtual machine where all your instances of your API apps and logic app will run. This is what you pay for. You can either create from new, the pricing tier enables. You can either choose from the available the pricing tiers. They are available like free, premium, and standard, or always standard is much better. But in this case, I can select one which I've already created. And I'm just going to show you that I have two service plans. I'm going to select one. For an HTTP, you have to do some settings for this case. For the HTTP listener, it's a simple one. Just got one setting which you have to change. You have to change this to false. So why do we need to change this to false? If you keep it as true as default, when someone posts a message to this HTTP listener, you're going to get the response immediately as a synchronous process. Whereas in our case, we are going to get an HTTP request, a post message. I'm going to validate it. I'm going to transform it from one format to another, and then I'm going to send the response. I'll take care of the response. So I'm making this, I'll have to make this as false. Click OK. And then click. Once you click create, after a minute, you'll get the license provision. I've done this. It's exactly the same step. I'm just moving it. Now created an HTTP listener, and then I need a BizTalk XML validator. So I put there in the marketplace, provision and an XML validator from there. Otherwise, you'll follow the same approach as marketplace. Just type BizTalk. So the BizTalk API apps. As you can see here, there are BizTalk rules engine, the validator, XML, JSON decoder, XML export, extractor. I don't know if you've been working on for a while. During the initial days of this, the app services, JSON was there, JSON encoder was there, and for the last week or so, myself and my colleague were searching for it. The JSON encoder was taken off from the marketplace. I believe it is for some performance reason. They've just re-added it again. And I searched it back on Friday evening. It was there. So in my case, since I was on the create validator, just select this plan. In this case, I've selected the existing one. Give a name to it and just create. Click create. This will again provision the XML validator. Again, to save time, there is nothing much, no settings that you have to do at the moment. So I've already created it. Now we got the stock XML validator created. One thing, the API app, as you can see here, click on the transformation later and create create the API app, create the instance of the API app. Done this. Now we have got HTTP listener instance provisioned, XML validator provisioned, XML transformation service provision. Now I have to configure this bit before I move on. My the API apps on the provision. Why I've come here is, as I said, I need to configure things before I start my logic apps. For XML, yes, I receive an XML message through an HTTP listener. Then I have to click on I have to configure something for the XML validator. Once you get the XML on the schemas, you have to which you want to validate here. So you can add more than one. What I've done before I continue here, what I've done is this year 2012. If you have installed Azure Stock Services SDK, you'll have these options. For providing a schema, you don't need you don't need to have the Stock Services SDK. But in our example, we need to also provision the transformation, the map to the transformation service, which requires a TRFM file, which is available in the BizTalk Services SDK. So you need to have Visual Studio 2012 with Azure BizTalk Services SDK installed in it. Once you have that, you can go to File, create a new project. Under C#, you'll have BizTalk Services, and then BizTalk Services template, create new. You'll get. As of now, in this case, simple, straightforward. So I thought it is not required to create everything from the scratch. So what I've created here is a simple schema, an order message, an order request which contains ID, date, and an item. And I created another schema called order response, which contains a couple of elements, ACK ID and the reference. I've created another. As I said, if you have used the Azure BizTalk Services SDK in Visual Studio 2012, you'll have this template where you can have the map created like TRFM. What I've done is I've just created a map, the order ID as the order reference. I'm just concatenating two values from the input message and saying it as an ACK message. You can have your grid or anything popular. For the sake of the simplicity, it's a transformation. It's a map which converts an order request to an order response. What I've done is the coming out to the API app, the XML validated configuration, my input message is going to be an order request message. So in the configuration of the API app, if you click on the app services, you'll get the schema there. Click on the app. So click on the you can give your own custom name and then choose the schema that you did. So I've chosen order request message. And then click. Now an input message has been added to our XML validator API. Now I need to configure transform my exactly similar, but instead of schema, obviously for the transformation service, you have to configure, you have to upload the map. We have created exactly like a schema, but in this case for map, click add new. That's it. Let's upload the map, which I've already added. It's time. Fine. We'll take. Before I move on to the 1 minute, I think I've got a call from Michael. Hi, Mike. I've got the feedback. Yes, I was busy seeing the, showing the demo rather than looking into a chat window. I thought I'll come to a chat window a bit later. Yes, I'm going. As a tip, what I'm going to show here is that yes, yes, I've done. No, if you remember, while provisioning the HTTP listener service, I've given a package setting to the HTTP listener as false. There are similar cases. If you had read Sarvana's blog on using the file connector, you would have given lots of configuration while provisioning the service. If you have used, if you have read my blog on how to use a SQL connector, you would have given the SQL connection string on configuration. I have always heard some questions from the community that, yes, I've given some settings during the provisional, but if I want to see it back, how do I go and see? It's a good question because it's not so easy or straightforward to see those settings, but there is a way. I'll show you how. You click on the HTTP content, wait for it to load. Click all settings. We normally expect, yes, I want to see it under the application setting, but it is not there. For in this case of HTTP listener, yes, it is a simple true or false set for the response. Do I need to send the response automatically or not? But in the case of the file connectors or in case of a complex connectors where you would have given lots of package setting, it's handy to go back and see what you have created. It's handy to go back and update what you have created. Lens. Let the essential part also load. But I thought it's going to help, no, and then click on all settings. It is the all settings of the host blade, and then click on the app settings. Down. Now, if you actually see, the file connector or the SQL connectors, you'll have list of settings, list of configurations, which you can see here. My personal opinion, it has to be there in the it has to be there in the easier access settings. I think there are a few. 1 minute. Let me. Are there some comments for me? Hopefully you will not get the audio, so because I had another session opening, so maybe it would have taken some bandwidth. Now it is stopped. Hopefully you will see a better audio going forward. Yes, no, after the settings that you have given now, the settings what you have given during the provisioning of the service. Right. So now we have the XML validator service and the transformation service. Now it's the web mobile options of the app services along with the others. Click on the and create a name. Give a name for you. Give something like request response. Choose the app plan and where it's going to run. I'll ensure that also make sure that you choose the same resource group where you have provisioned the app group, the API app, the apps which we have created is the HTTP listener, XML validator, and transformation service. Make sure your logic app is also created in the same resource group so that you can access those in your logic app. That's it. Select the service plan and then click create. It takes a while. What I've seen is when you click create, it takes a while to create. Again, at this. If you have created, if you have clicked on the create button, it would have created a logic app and it would navigate you to this page. It is, if it has not navigated to you to this page, go to the browse button, see the logic app what you have created, and then you can go from here. This is a fresh new logic app. What I'm going to create is click on a panel where you can create your own logic apps. If you has got all the API you have provision. In my case, I've been trying out few, so I have few more. If you are doing it first time after this demo, you would have seen maybe only the recurrence and HTTP comes by default. You would only see HTTP listener, transformation service, and the XML validator. As I said, in this case, I'm going to receive an HTTP request. Click on the HTTP listener app, which you have provisioned. The HTTP listener is going to act as a trigger. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to receive a request. So receive, and you'll get this option. Click on the HTTP request. What I'm going to do with this request, someone is going to post a message. So select post, and I'm going to get a message. I'll have to give a relative URL. Let's say I'm giving this as request response, and in line with what I've given the name of the app. This is nothing but it's very much similar to the filter condition that we give when using the HTTP adapter in our BizTalk server. If you have used PTS HTTP receive.dll, you'll give a filter, something like that. You have given a filter to differentiate the message coming into this particular logic app. I'm given a relative URL. Click OK. Click the tick button, the green tick, and then you'll have this one. If you see this one, this is nothing but the output structure of this HTTP listener option. The output structure, once you receive it, you're going to get the request ID, the content, and others which are listed here. Now, I have a listener, an API app which receives the request, and then I'm going to validate this message. So let me click on the XML validator API which now an HTTP listener, an XML validator comes here. Just keep looking at the sequence in which the actions are positioned or placed on the panel. I'm going to explain how it is all happening. Click on this arrow button. You're going to validate this switch, so this is the only option available here. Click on it. Then you will get an input XML. You have to provide the input XML message to validate for this the API app to validate. If you click on this button, you'll get these two options. These are nothing but the output of the previous action. In this case, the output is the HTTP listener action. We have content and the request. Though it just shows two out of the output, the available output structures like content and the request ID. If you want to access, not for the XML validator, if you are going to use in some other action, if you want to access the HTTP listener, you can still do that. How do we do? An easier way, click on any of the available one, which actually construct you an expression. Just change this last bit, which is, in this case, I'm going to use the request ID. If you want to use an header, change this to an header. So you can do what though this lists you only a couple of options, you can still add more. So in this case, in this example, the validate XML is going to get the content of a previous action, the trigger. So this expression says, this trigger get the output from the trigger, the content, the content of the body from the trigger action. This is an expression. I'm going to write few functions. I'm going to explain those functions while I do that. After I've done that, I will also show how to get the list of those expressions available. There is a nice documentation. Again, this is not in a straightforward the page where you can easily find. I'll show you the way to find. With this XML validator, this is going to receive. The input message what I've provided here for the XML validator is the listener, the content of the HTTP listener. So click on the tick button. It is validate. In line with what I've said here, this API app, XML validator's API app's output structures are this. It's going to give you a result, schema name, node name, and error collection. We'll use one of them, especially the result. Yes, I'm going to validate the receive message. Now I'm going to transform the received message from another. Click on this arrow box. Click the transform button. Remember, we have already given the transformation, the map to this API app. Here, I'm just going to configure the input. The input here I'm going to give is the content. As you can see, when you click on this button, you now have the outputs from the immediate preceding action, and also the immediate preceding action, which is the XML validator, and also the one before that. So the engine, the logic app, the engine is brilliant enough is to show the things what it matters. So in this case, the transformations input message is going to be the content of my the request which I've received. Fine. Am I going to simply map everything? No. I'm going to map only if the XML validators validates the message and if it's a valid message. So I'm going to add an action to the XML transformation. You can add this by clicking on this dotted line at the top of the API action. Click here. You'll have three options. This is obviously to delete this action. This is what matters to us in this demo, where we can add a condition to this particular API app. And you can also repeat over the list. It's something like a while loop, repeating over the array from its previous condition, API app. In this case, I'm going to add a condition to meet. What is going to be my condition? I'm going to say that this BizTalk transformation service should execute only if the XML validator is true. I'm going to add another function called equals, which takes two parameters. The first parameter is the XML validators, which is nothing but this. I'm going to say why it is an XML validator, why not XML validator 0, 1, 2, 3. It's a name of the instance which is there. I'm going to explain that a bit in a while. The body of the XML, the XML validators, the preceding actions result. The result is nothing but the output structure here. If you are doing anything based on an error condition, let's say you are handling and you want to send an email in case of any error. So what you can do is, or a specific error, you can have a Gmail or an email API app in your logic app. Have a condition say if the error description is an internal error, send me an error. So this is the power of the expressions here. So in this case, the first condition is going to be see whether the first parameter equals to true. Yes, true. True is a string literal, whereas the equal the function expects a Boolean value. So I can do the typecasting a value, a string literal, using a Boolean or any other type is also one of the functions. In this simple line, I've used two functions, equals for ensuring the two parameters are true or false, equal or false. Otherwise, another function called Boolean. If you can see, for the first function, I've used at sign. Sorry. For when you start developing the API app, when you start using the logic app expressions, the common mistake that we do is we always add for every function. It's not required. At is required only for the first function in an expression. For the subsequent function, you don't need to have the at. In this case, what I've defined a condition is, let's click here and then explain later. I've defined in this condition, execute this condition only if the output of this XML validator is true. If it is true, what I'm going to do, I'm going to send a response now. So click on the HTTP listener, see the flow. I've done an HTTP. I've just added the sequence of the action from my right. So click on it. Now the engine is intelligent enough to say you already have an API app which receives the request. So now you may want to send a response. So you'll only get this option here. Click on the send HTTP option. On it, and then you'll get the request ID. Click on this button now. Now you'll have more options. These last two from the output from the first action, the HTTP listener, these three from the one next XML validator, and this one is for the one preceding this action, which is the XML transformation. In this case, request ID is something like a correlation ID which we use in our on-premise. So send the response to the same request ID which I received as part of the request. What I'm going to send back? I'm going to send back the transformed message. So in this case, I'm going to select the output, this output of this XML BizTalk transformation service. Click on this. The status code going to be 200. Click OK. So now we can send response if it's a valid message. Now I need to have another HTML HTTP listener which will send me response if I receive an invalid message. I'll highlight this again. I've just added another listener, it again created the HTTP to the the existing listener from left to right. Choose the action. Give the quotation ID. In this case, is going to be the request ID. The content, I'm going to change it now. Let it be the request content. What I'm going to do is, I'm not simply going to send the request content, but I'm going to concatenate the whatever they've sent with a message called invalid. So I'm going to use another method called concatenate, which takes parameters which it can simply concatenate the string. The first one I'm going to say invalid. If it is invalid, append the word invalid to whatever they have received as part of the request, and then send a response. I've just constructed this as I've said. I've used two functions, trigger and concatenate. The second function did not have at sign, whereas the first one has got. I'm going to give the same status 200. You can either give 200. Yes, this is going to send the response. But when do I need to send the response? Only if the XML transformation service only when the XML validator's output is false. Click add a function. So in this case, I'm going to say the similar function, which is going to say equals. As I said, is going to take two parameters. First one is going to be the body of the XML validator API action which we created. I'm interested in its result value. Typecast the value to false. Click here. Magic. Now the HTTP has positioned itself next to the or just below transformation service. See the flow now. I'm going to receive a request, validate the message. If it is true, proceed from this direction. True, give a response back. If it is false, give this response back. If you see the sequence of actions, the sequence in which these actions are positioned in self, they are actually the sequencing or the flow of the sequence happens in three ways. In orchestration, in on-premise development, we normally do from top to bottom. In this case, it happens in three different ways. One, implicitly by providing an implicit condition. Implicit condition by means, in this case of an BizTalk XML validator, after giving everything, it positioned itself after the HTTP listener. The reason being, its input XML, it depends on the execution of the trigger. If you see, the trigger content needs to be there for this to execute. Click on it for the host property to load, or also the host property load. It will open the API app overlaid. Wait for this section to load. The absolute URL for the HTTP listener where you want to post. You can click here. Otherwise, click on browse. Give URL. Copy this. Go to your post. I've already added this. Reset it. Let's do it from start. I'm going to post a message where to this listener. Remember, I've given a filter, which is nothing but the URL which I've given during the triggers configuration. Click here, and the message. This is a sample instance of a message, and then click send. Wait for a while. What happens is it posts a message now, as we defined in the logic. It's been validated. It's transformed from the request message to the response message, provided me the ACK and the order reference. Let's change. Let's give some invalid message. Now XML validator is going to validate the message and say, hey, it's an invalid message. So get the same request message which I posted along with the response, along with the word which I've concatenated invalid. If we go back, people now after this, I'm going to show role-based authentication, role-based access control, and more importantly, the very new one, how you can deploy the logic apps from your Visual Studio. It's not going to take long. It's just 15 minutes. You'll be there. You'll see the amazing things that are coming on our way. So go to the logic apps. Click on the logic app which you have created. This is the execution status of each instance run. Click on each of them into this action. As you can see, the listener 0 is the one which actually received the message. Sorry, the listener 0 is the one which which happened after the validation of the message. So this happens from top, bottom to up. So first I've received a message, and the XML validator was validated, and then the transformation has happened, which is also successful. Then this one is skipped because the XML was true, and there is no need for me to execute the HTTP condition which I've kept for the invalid case. So this is for the valid one. The other one, in case of valid XML message, I need to get the response. So the other one executed. If you see the other the instance where I have executed an invalid message, in this case, the transformation, the XML validated the message. The transformation service is skipped, and the positive HTTP response is skipped. Only the HTTP response which returned the HTTP, the invalid message is there. So this is how you can easily track the status of the message. If you actually click on these messages, you will be received by this particular action and the output link. So what it's the request response stage, the status of the validated one, and the status of each action is already shown there. What I'm going to show now is I'm going to take go to the QR code. I'm not going to explain the code because into this code from my Visual Studio and deploy it from my Visual Studio. Let me go to my Notepad++. Let's keep a copy. This project which is there in Visual Studio, but the new Logic App option to deploy from the Visual Studio are now available on 2013. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log from this the Visual Machine. Let me down this virtual machine. I'm going to start my another Visual Machine where I have 2012, where I'm going to show you deployed. I'm going to show the role-based authentication, the role-based access control that you can provide. Let it start before that is authentication control. Yeah, this is another subscription. So what I'm going to do is, yes, I've created a Logic app. If you the if you go to the log, this is what we created. This is which we created. So what I'm going to do is I have a member in my team. I have a member in my team who just needs to have a read access. I don't want the member to change any configuration. I just want him to see the status of the run and also see how the flow is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call based. So click on the browse. Let me do this. Click. Once this loads, I have another user who has also got as the MSDN subscription. I'm going to give this. The that are available. Click on the to go another user. This is my other ID for my other MSDN subscription. Click here, select, and another user, only the read access. That's been added for actions. An expression and an API actions. So whereas if I go into the other logic app, if I go into my other logic app option, you will not see those features. Let me the view for my for the other I've given read access. Well, other mission where I'm Visual Studio. User. This is the user where I have created my logic apps, and I'm going to log in as another user who will only see the read access to the logic apps. Let me log in. If you click here, you have two subscriptions. Let me go and see the other subscription. Click on the other one. This is who has given you the read honestly, if you browse, click browse. User to user. This is the one which we created now. Click on the triggers and action. That hopefully you can see immediately. You can see that you don't have these options here. You don't have an option of edit or save. The action is what you have defined in the other user listed here, and then in this case you just have the save button. The problem is that, as you can see, I've just given an access to select a particular logic to certain an API and a certain logic apps. Shown to this user in a read-only mode. That's my hope. It's a role-based. A demo of as I said, this was showcased by Microsoft during Build 20 of May, like literally a couple of weeks ago, where they've showcased how to deploy Logic App from Visual Studio. If people have attended the recent Joe's Twist, the session in Integration Monday, people were asking about the support for the Visual Studio. Why do they need? Joe's Twist asked, why do someone wants to have Visual Studio? People were saying that I want to keep my code in the source safe. I'm a developer. I'm more comfortable working in the Visual Studio environment. In 2 days from then, maybe it would have happened in the background when we asked this question. 2 days it happened. The discussion with Joe's Twist happened on 29th, and 2 days from then on 1st of May, they have showcased, Microsoft showcased this option. So if you have installed the Microsoft, the Azure SDK 2.6 version on your Visual Studio 2013, if you go click project, cloud, you will have these options. Azure Resource Group. Click on it. You'll get the Azure template, list of templates. So there is the Logic App. Logic App. You can also create Logic App and API apps here. In this case, I'm interested on creating the Logic App. Click OK. Is going to create this is going to create a simple bit and a couple of files and a PowerShell script which is used to deploy this code from Visual Studio onto your cloud. Once it's created, now I appreciate the way in which they made things so simple. If you click on the template folder, you'll have 2 files. I'm interested on this Logic App .json file. As you can see, this expression has got 4 sections: parameters, variables, resources, and outputs. Click on the called definitions. You see here, definition, you have 2 options. You have in Visual Studio support here. So you have IntelliSense support to construct your Logic apps from the JSON point of view directly here. Otherwise, you can use the code which I've copied already and then paste it here. As of now, we don't have the graphical way to do Logic apps from Visual Studio. It is only available in the Azure portal. From here, you can do it through JSON. For the demo purpose, I'm going to delete this definition expression, and I've already pasted the definition what we have created in the other demo. I'm going to paste it copied from the demo which I've showed. Once see how quick it is, save it, click deploy, new deployment. It will ask you to log in. If you're already logged in, it will show you the subscription. I'm going to choose the group where I'm going to deploy my code. Click here. Before you go there, edit button. You can provide a name to your Logic app. What I'm going to give is, I'm going to create the same name as I gave for the one, but with slight difference. Request response, but this one is deployed from Visual Studio. One thing which I have to provide is the service plan. Let me go to the Logic app, to my portal. For the people who have been staying on long, I appreciate your effort. It's not going to be long. I'm just going to finish it in few minutes. I'm going to get the service plan which I've already created, so I can reuse here and also show in how it's going to get deployed. The service plan is nothing but the one which we normally choose while provisioning a service, either an API app or the logic app. This is the one. I'm going to use the one which is already there. So use this. Before I that, let me show you the not there. What happened? Right, two sessions. I was already listed. One is the one which we created for our demo. Try request response 9. What I put it 9 from Visual Studio. Give a name and then click save, deploy. Wait for a while. Uses the power this script folder and starts to deploy your logic app into cloud. Not going to take long. It's just doing it now. It's happening. Yeah, the template is valid. Create template. It has created a template for the logic app. All been happening. Provision the status under my resource group. This has always been the one. When Joe just asked this, how many people are interested to do things for Logic App from Visual Studio? There were so many the replies saying, yeah, there's so many that say yes, I want to do it. And I think it's done now. Now. Oops. Let me. There it is. This is the one which we now deployed using the Visual Studio. You need Azure SD6. As you can see, yes, the things which was this is the one from Visual Studio. And now, as we define, I'm not getting this here if I'm opening it from another machine where I've developed in the other one. It's just to get the code and then save. And as of now, as I said, it does not have the graphical mode. Only I thought is going towards it. Here's the request. Hopefully, it will lab precision. What we can expect in the near future, as we have seen, the Azure services is now something for the cloud, and Microsoft was saying that you can have a similar logic app, the shapes and API features for your on-prem as well. All capabilities available on the cloud will be made available as part of the Azure Pack. The Azure Pack is something that's running your own mini, something like running your own mini data center. You can expect that in the near future. As I was saying, as of now, the Visual Studio only supports the JSON code view. In future, we can expect the built-in designer. These are my hopes. Sensing from the direction which Microsoft is proceeding, I hope this will be there. And what we heard from Microsoft team is that yes, they are working on implementing some of the patterns like convoys, long-running processes, auto delivery. These words are from Microsoft. The third point, we can expect that in the near future soon, and also handling the large message handling in we were able to handle large messages in on-premise because of the way in which streaming of messages happen. Messages flown through stream, whereas in this case, since it is through over the browser or over the cloud, it's not the case. So we can expect a large message handling feature happening so soon. And when you start working, you'll see some error messages. They are not quite there, but they are useful, but it can be made better. I hope that's going to come in soon as well. Yeah, these are some of the ones which are going to come in. Any questions? I think it's in UK it is slightly past 9. I'll be happy to answer. The other option is Sriram or someone from BizTalk is going to. I'll look in. I appreciate the reply from one of the questioner. I'll look into your questions. I'll reply you back. And Microsoft, Michael Stevenson has shared the view the page where he is going to create a new forum, a thread where you can post your questions. I'm sure I'll come back and answer all of them. If I'm not able to get the replies, I'll try to get the replies from the product team. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for staying till late. As I said, I've already written a few articles about the app services and Logic App. I'm going to write some more, how to handle debatching, which I've already done, how to handle exception handler. There are a few more interesting things are going to come in, which will be seen there in the Logic App. Thanks for staying in late, and thanks for providing this platform to share my view for both Michael Stevenson and BizTalk 360. Thank you. Cheers. Thanks for all the people who have attended and still stayed till late. Thanks for your time.